It's a very good morning here in East Africa. It should be somewhere it's an afternoon and an evening. But you are most welcome to a special edition of ACFIMTALKS. And today we are discussing the implication of National Census on elections that are forthcoming in 2026. My name is Felix Kafuma, who is the moderator, and I'll be joined by two distinguished gentlemen that I'll be introducing in a short while. But before we start, you can catch this conversation. We are live on our social media spaces, on X space, which is ACFIM Africa, but also on our Facebook, which is ACFIM Africa as well. You can catch us there and be able to participate and also drop in your comments or questions so that they can be answered. To provide a bit of a background and a context to this conversation that we are having today is that you all know we've last month the census was concluded. The national census was concluded. I would actually say the much awaited national census was concluded. To be specific, on the 25th of May is when the exercise was concluded. And we know that by law, countries are supposed to conduct censuses, primarily for many things, among which there's also planning. But of significance of the to the conversation we're having, to the discussion that we're having today, the National Census provides population data that informs the creation of constituencies. Ideally, constituencies are supposed to be demarcated using up-to-date census data, and this is made sure that elected representatives ideally represent roughly the same number of people. So in essence, we can argue that census helps to maintain what we would call equality in representation. So we can also say that population census allows the electoral boundaries to be adjusted in accordance to the population changes to either avoid underrepresentation or overrepresentation, especially in most of the legislative bodies. So, and I think we shall be having a conversation to that effect, looking at how boundaries, new constituencies have been created over time, especially in between, before we've had this national census. According to Article 63, and I'll revisit this article, allow me to quote it, stipulates that boundary of the constituency shall be such that the number of inhabitants in the constituency is as nearly as possible equal to the population quota. In essence, population quota can only be established after a national census exercise, and that forms the crux of our conversation today. With me, I have with Thomas and Michael advocates. Michael, you are most welcome to today's conversation. I hope, Michael, you can hear me. Michael, are you there? Okay, as Michael sets up his equipment, let me introduce Henry Muguzi, who is the Executive Director for Alliance for Finance Monitoring, which is popularly known as ACFIM, a political finance watchdog and think tank. Henry will be joining us shortly. They'll be joining us to take a dive, quite a deep dive into the implication of the national census exercise and what it means to the forthcoming elections that are scheduled for early January 2026. Literally, to put it, we are just 18 months away from the national elections, and that is how significant the census that took place last month is important to that exercise, among other things. Michael, can you hear me? I don't know whether you're able to now to get on set.
Yes, I can hear you. My background and place is on the base, but I can hear you, and I should be able to see me in a moment.
Great, great. I can hear you too.
Yeah, I'm also trying to run away from the cold, so bear with me.
Hey, are you there?
Very good.
Okay, Henry is there. Henry has joined us. So those are our two distinguished panelists for today's conversation. And allow me to kick it off and take it off the ground. And I'm going to start with Michael. I've just been providing a bit of a background. We know that in the next 18 months, and we will be having what we call our national elections. So, rhetorically speaking, if the national census is to inform the demarcation of constituencies, what do you think the Electoral Commission should be doing right now in the event that we've just had the population census done? So just weigh in there what you think the Electoral Commission, how should the Electoral Commission make use of this information, and of what significance is it to the electoral roadmap that has been laid out moving into 2026?
Felix, I need to thank ACFIM for putting this together once again. You'll forgive my video, I'm actually using my phone. It's the best for me right now. And I just want to say that elections is not about machines. It's not about animals. It's human beings that actually cast their vote. So election is part of what we call the right to political participation. This one is enshrined in Article 25 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. It is contained in Article 13 of the African Charter, to which Uganda is signatory. It is also contained in the African Charter on Democracy and Elections, and also our Constitution, Article 3, that says the Ugandans, the citizens, shall determine how they should be governed. And I remember saying this for a period of time, that we can even choose to say, maybe we no longer need the elections, but it's up to Ugandans and not some people there. Article 59 goes ahead to say that every Ugandan of 18 years and above has a right to vote. Now, given that background, it is now therefore imperative that now we need to ascertain who is able to vote. Now, South Africa has just held its elections, and I think it's one of the worst low voter turnout. You can't imagine over 11 million South Africans stayed away from the election. Now, election is about numbers. So if you don't know the numbers of citizens you have, then by the way, the right to vote is only limited to citizens. But there are some countries that, like I think Mauritius and the rest, that are extending it to other people who are not citizens, to say that if you've been a resident here for this period of time, you can vote. But back to citizens. Now, that's why the census is very important. And that's why I was actually counted. I flew in just to be counted, just to make a point that I need to be part of the statistics. Now, for you to be able to say, as the Electoral Commission, that we are planning for this number of votes, and the Electoral Commission says we was projecting over millions and plus of Ugandans to vote. Now, you need to ascertain how many Ugandans do we have? How many Ugandans of voting age do we have? For one, to do planning, resource allocation, but also to determine the population quotas, just like you've been reading under Article 63. Now, there's a difference between the population of Uganda and the registered voters. But we all know that the registered voters now come from the population of Uganda. From the data we have at UBOS to know how many Ugandans are in constituency A, how many Ugandans are in constituency B. So that also helps us to determine and say, now, in terms of representation, this, for example, Kampala has always had like over 4 million Ugandans. But why does Kampala have one MP and some constituencies just have I think 2,500 people and they have an MP? So that disparity needs to be sorted. And you can only know that by the population census. So Felix and colleagues, Article 63 is emphatic that for there to be demarcation of constituencies, there must be a population quota reached. And how do you determine the population quota? By conducting the census to know that this is the number of citizens in this place. Mark you, it's not just about those registered to vote. It's about the general population, because the MPs and the representation in parliament is not only for those who are voting, it's for everyone that needs to be represented. So under Article 63, the demarcation of constituencies can only happen if the census has been conducted. And actually it says that when the census has, the results have been published. So we don't know yet when the census are going to be published. I think Henry can correct me, the last, because the census happens every 10 years, and I think the last publication was either 2016 or 2017 or 18, after even the 2016 elections. So between that time and now, we've not had any census apart from 9th May and 10th May. So for all constituencies that were created that period of time, we ask the question, are those legal? Can they stand the truth of law to say that actually they were created within the ambit of the law? Was there a population census? Because the constitution is clear, they don't just say census. They don't, they don't just say, water that go and determine and demarcate. There must be a census, and the census must be published. Now, move fast forward. So the Electoral Commission has to utilize the data from the census. Now we have to wait until it is published, until the census is published, and the process still the regional mechanisms and the global mechanisms of citizen participation under the African Charter. They emphasize the need for a national consensus. I think Burkina Faso and Cameroon, one of the matters is that they amended their constitution laws and the rest without involving the citizens. And the African court said, no, you must involve the citizens. So even in the demarcation process, it should not only be left to politicians alone, because like Charles de Gaulle, which many call de Gaulle, says politics is a matter too serious to be left to politicians alone. What that means is that every citizen must participate in the processes, not just in the election, but processes that lead to election, such as the National Census on the demarcation of constituencies. I want to see Kampalans saying we are 5 million, why are we having one MP? Wakiso alone, the Busiro North or whatever, they have more people. Actually, they deserve to have more constituencies than some constituencies created for some individuals. People just get 2 sub-counties, put them together, and give and award themselves a constituency. That should not be the case. And I think that this is the point where we sit on the table. Once we get these results published, even before they are published, for us to sit and say, do we have enough time? And by the way, we should not always be creating constituencies towards an election. The process of developing constituencies should be an ongoing process, and not just because we need to give some people some posts towards the election. That will be rushed. I do not expect creation of any constituency towards the election, because that again is a rushed process. But be that as it may, Felix, is that therefore what am I saying? That legally you cannot create constituencies unless you have determined a population quota. But population quota means that you get the number of people there, divide by the constituencies, how many people will you get? So the constituencies are supposed to be actually evenly distributed by the reading of Article 63. Number 2, the census must be published. The census is not yet published. So we have to wait until that is happening. The last one, Felix, is the role of politicians in this, because the politicians are going to use this data. Unfortunately, let me use the word for scheming, to scheme and say, I think in this constituency here, since my district has 3 million, I need to cut out. You're going to see people lobbying for districts, by the way, watch out. People are going to be lobbying for districts, so they go and stand for woman MP. People are going to be lobbying for cities, so they go and stand for whatever they want to stand for. So away from using the population results for selfish interests, for gains such as, I need to stand and also represent my people, I think it is an abuse on us for people to continue to think that we have asked them that to go and represent us. And indeed, when they reach there, they are doing their own things. So it is high time we use the results in a better way. I've been talking to a researcher. He got interested in this discussion. I hope he'll be able to come in. And he's saying that, by the way, this discussion is very important for researchers in terms of getting the figures right, because once you get the figures right of how many Ugandans you have, then you're able to do the politics. So let us remove politics from data. I think I want to make that point clear. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Michael, for really, really doing justice and getting us off, giving us a more detailed implication. Let me weigh in here, Henry. Your thoughts, your take. What does this mean? Who else should be involved? And also, Aboneka talks about politicians, how they can make use of this data. Let's come to you. You've worked in this space where you engage politicians. How best can they utilize this data as well? If you can give us your thoughts.
Okay, thank you very much, Felix, for that introduction, but also Michael, for laying the ground. You couldn't have done it any better. Of course, the National Census is very important, and it's been done since time immemorial. You remember it was done even in the period of Jesus when he was young. You remember when they had to, Herod had the sanction, had auction, what's it called? They directed that the census be done, and then they had to smuggle him out. So the census is quite critical for planning purposes, because the country must know how many people do I have in a particular area at a particular time, in order for them to be able to determine the amount of resources that are needed to adequately provide for the citizens. Because the role of the state is provide services to the citizens, but for this to happen, they should be able to establish how many people, for example, are using this health center, how many people do we have in a particular area, and how many schools, which then would occasion precipitate would occasion the importance of setting up other schools, roads, the traffic, and so on. So the census is very important. But to allude to the point Michael makes of political rights, the census then again becomes very important, because we know that the most one of the cardinal civil and political rights of citizens is that they must participate in the political and electoral processes, and that participation has to be done in an orderly manner. They should not just stampede themselves into the elections. Now, for that participation to happen, it is important that a body that is mandated to guide and regulate this knows exactly what it is dealing with. And therefore, there are issues of equitable distribution of constituencies, as it were, and also as you noted it in the preamble. For this to happen, there should be a fairness in the manner in which the constituencies are distributed. Of course, Michael speaks about the need, as the Constitution provides for, to establish a population quota. We don't have this quota. We don't even know whose responsibility is it to establish this quota. Is it that the Electoral Commission should be the one to propose numbers and then take these numbers to Parliament for approval? Or should it be that Parliament gets on the front foot and is the one that comes up with these numbers and then directs the Electoral Commission that reports to it to act accordingly? I was actually taking a calculation of if we have, as we speak, before we get the results of the new census, I think we have the population of Uganda is there about 49 million. So 49 million are divided by the number of legislators we have in the Parliament. For example, If we have 500 plus, I came up with a number of about 97.5 thousand. So you get to see that at least if that's going to be the case, there should have been an effort to make sure that the constituencies are evenly balanced, that every constituency has at least 98,000 voters, in which case those that have 5,000 should not become constituencies. Those that have close to 1 million people, such as Nansa now, Chadondo, Busiro, and so on, this should be split. So these are some of the things I think we need to get the Electoral Commission to work on. And unfortunately, it is one thing that many citizens are not aware of. It's our duty to sensitize the citizenry. Those that are now listening, viewing us and listening, to understand that this is a matter that has to be brought to the attention of the policymakers, but also the electoral management body, to understand that we as citizens understand this, and that therefore the population census, as we've gone through it, and we await the final publication to tell us the numbers of how many we are as we speak. We want to see this now also impacting or having an effect on the demarcation of constituencies. I have reviewed the electoral roadmap, it's called a strategic plan of the Electoral Commission for the year 2024, 25 to 26 to 27. And you get to see that they actually anticipating creation of more parishes, more sub-counties, more districts. I think there is a likelihood that districts might be increased from the current 146 to 153 or thereabout. The parishes are going to increase from about 70,000 to about 90,000. All this is bound to have an impact on the number of constituencies, which again is something that should be informed by the census. But the most important thing is to make sure that the law is followed to the letter, and that the provisions we see in the Constitution are operationalized, which is what would happen. So the census is very important to drive the point home, not only in national planning for government to be able to extend services equitably to the population. It is also important in the exercise of the right to the political right, the civil and political rights of citizens, such as the right to vote, the right to participate, the freedom of participation, the right to participate in campaigns, the right to be nominated to stand, and so on and so on and so forth. And so for that to happen, then the body that is demarcating those constituencies, whether they are going to be local government constituencies or legislative constituencies, should be able to use the results of the national census. We would want to see a situation where those results come to bear on what the electoral management body, the electoral commission, comes up with as the final list of constituencies that are eligible for the coming elections. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Henry. I was looking at the statistics here. The Electoral Commission report, the 2026 elections, it envisages the voters register to have about 24 million Ugandans. That's an increment of about 6 million from the previous 2021 elections, from 18 to 24. So I want to see how that tallies now with what the population results will look like as we await. But let me come back to Council Aboneka. And now let me I'm coming back to the Article 63, which is especially clause 2, which clause 3, which provides for the boundary creation. I want you for an ordinary Ugandan, when he hears the word quota, he hears the word boundary demarcation of the constituencies, may not necessarily make a lot of sense of this. Can you speak to an ordinary voter what this is what it means, and why he or she should be interested in the results of the census in respect to what is most likely to be happening in terms of creation of new constituencies, especially now that you speak to the fact that we know some constituencies are either underrepresented or others are overrepresented, and what is the implication of that concerning equity in representation, equity and equality in representation within most of these, let's say, parliament or at local government level.
Maybe Felix, before Michael comes in, maybe the viewers will be helped if you could read that entire section you are talking about. If you can read it, Ipsis Mabeba.
Okay, that article 63, which is subject to Article 63, Clause 3, but the Clause 3 is subject to Clause 2. So let me read the Article 63 as is in the Constitution of Uganda in its entirety. Is the article that provides for how constituencies are demarcated or created. But there are specific clauses that are of interest to us concerning this topic we are discussing, especially Article 63, which when you look at Clause 3, but they say Clause 3 is subject to Clause 2. Let me read Clause 2 first, so that someone can follow the Clause 3, which is of interest to this discussion. Clause 2 looks at when demarcating constituencies for purposes of Clause 1. So Clause 1, which is the first clause under the Article 63, reads that Uganda shall be divided into as many constituencies for the purpose of election of members of parliament as parliament may prescribe, and each constituency shall be represented by one member of parliament. Clause 2 of the same Article 63 then reads that when demarcating constituencies for purposes of Clause 1, which I've just read, the one that speaks to or prescribes or provides for the demarcation, it reads that Electoral Commission shall ensure that each county, as approved by Parliament, has at least one member of Parliament, except that no constituency shall fall within more than one county. Now, Clause 3, which is of interest, which is subject to Clause 2, is of the same article we are in of 63, reads that the boundary of a constituency shall be such that the number of inhabitants in the constituency is as nearly as possible equal to the population quota. There's a language here which I want my colleague here, Council Michael, to demystify, especially when you talk about population quota, and then also when they refer to what they consider to be the constituency, the demarcation process of the constituency, and how the population exercise, the census exercise, influences the process of creating a new constituency. And why is it of significance, interest to an ordinary voter? Why should he or she be interested in this process, especially when we talk about equality and representation to this effect? Councillor Michael.
Thank you, Felix. As I get my video on, could you kindly read the last two sub-articles of 63? Those will help us. The last two.
The last two sub-articles of 63. Article 63, Clause 2, when demarcating constituencies for the purpose of Clause 1, like I said, Clause 1 is the one which speaks to Uganda being divided into many constituencies. So the Clause 2, which is referring to the purposes of Clause 1 of the Article 63, says the Electoral Commission shall ensure that each county that as ensure that each county, as approved by Parliament, has at least one member of Parliament, except that no constituency shall fall within more than one county. Now,
Okay,
clause 3. You want clause 3 as well?
Just go to the bottom, the last two under Article 63, where it talks about the population quota and then the inhabitants. The last two paragraphs under Article 63.
Is clause 6. Clause 6 and 7.
Yes.
Okay.
Read the
Where
first,
the boundary of a constituency, established under this article is altered as a result of a review, the alteration shall come into effect upon the next dissolution of Parliament. That is clause 6. Clause 6. Clause 7 then reads, for the purposes of this article, population quota means the number obtained by dividing the number of inhabitants of Uganda by the number of constituencies into which Uganda is to be divided under this article.
Very good. I think we can start from there. The population quota means dividing the number of inhabitants by the constituencies we have and say this is our population quota, which now should be used. And for you to be able to determine how many inhabitants we have, we must carry out a census. If the results come out and say we have 52 million Ugandans, then you divide, say 52 million Ugandans divide by the number of places we have so far, and that gives you the population quota. But clause 6 is saying that those shall not take over immediately. They will come in the other parliament after the dissolution. And when does the dissolution happen? The dissolution happens when the term expires. I think that will be May, will it be May 2026 or something? We need to check. At what point does Parliament dissolve? I think Parliament dissolves before the election, right? So meaning that we should not expect the operation of the new constituencies in this election. I don't know if that is clear. The clause is clear that these will take effect upon dissolution. Now others interpret to say, yeah, we have dissolved, so we have to effect the new constituencies immediately. But I think we need court to guide us on that. What does that mean? Now, you know that there were cities that were created, over I think 17 or 11, and only 7 are operational, and they said we shall operationalize the rest later. Now, so that's what population quota means, that you get the number of inhabitants, how many we are, divide by the constituencies we have. Now, Parliament approves constituencies. The EC demarcates. Now, there is a fusion of roles there sometimes, because the EC is supposed to act upon the data that is available from UBOS, that these are the number of Ugandans we have. Now, what we have seen the practice is that Parliament stands there and then they approve a constituency and send it to the EC to demarcate. I think that's the practice we've seen. But the law is saying it shall be the role of the Electoral Commission to demarcate, and then Parliament approves. What that means to me is that the Electoral Commission demarcates and takes to Parliament for approval. That's my reading, but not the other way around. That Parliament sits and then they approve a constituency and then take to AC for the demarcate. I feel like it's wrong, because what's the basis of a parliamentary approval of a count or of a constituency? What do they base on? Now, the reason why we've been talking about municipalities, whether they are actually supposed to be constituencies, and you know this, that towards the election, they either create a new district or a municipality, or divide Nakawa into Nakawa East, Nakawa West, and then they quickly say we have a parliament. But those ones are for purposes of local administration and not a national parliament. So we have to ask a question. Nakawa West, is it a constituency under Article 63? Was it created after there was a national census? And that, actually, let's ask a question. What was the role of Electoral Commission in creating Chira municipality? What was the role of Electoral Commission in creating Nakawa? Is it West, where the lead of opposition comes from? What was the role of Electoral Commission? I think if we are to answer it that way, then we shall get the ambit, the importance of Article 63. If we have any constituency in this country and there was no role of Electoral Commission, just apart from gazetting it, then we need to question it. Because the Constitution is clear, the Electoral Commission shall demarcate, Parliament shall approve. Now, we need to investigate all these constituencies that were created, municipality this, municipality that, what was the role of Electoral Commission? It's not solely for Parliament, because Parliament is creating a job for itself. The notion of checks and balances, the notion of proper governance and transparency and ensuring that we are able to curb excesses is that Parliament cannot be sitting there and determining their own salaries. I think court already decided on that. That's why they have a parliamentary commission, but it's a parliamentary commission of Parliament itself. Guys sit there and say, let's give ourselves service awards and let's be happy. No, just like how the board of Bank of Uganda and the chair is the governor Bank of Uganda, that cannot be good corporate governance. All those are things we need to look at. So in terms of this election and sub-article 6 and 7, if you read it carefully, and the rest, it's the role of the Electoral Commission to demarcate. Parliament is just to approve. So this is simple for citizens. Just go and check new constituencies and ask yourself, what was the role of the Electoral Commission in this? Because it's supposed to be the Electoral Commission to actually do the donkey work, the background work, and say the number of constituencies that we should have because of the population quota and the rest. And then they table it before Parliament. So I think that is very key for. And lastly, Felix, why should Ugandans be bothered? Article 3 is clear. We have the power. The power belongs to the people. They don't say people shall have power at some point. Power belongs to us. Originally, that's the basis. And we shall determine on who shall govern us and how and when. And Ugandans have said under Article 59 that anyone who is 18 years and above and is a citizen shall vote. Now, voting is not an event, it's a process. It starts from the numbers, the demarcation. And one of the things the researcher told me before this call, before this discussion, is that we need to pay careful attention. The reason why we have population census also is to guide on issues of election fraud. Ghost voters, people are going to create, so I am sure that maybe politicians are hobnobbing UBOS to say how many more people does my constituency have. Let's wait for the publication of the final results. And I'm hoping that the UBOS will stand by its grounds not to disseminate and publish unofficial data to people, because people want to know what's going on in their constituency. Or someone wants to know, can I maybe create Kitugumu West, So they need to wait and we get the official figure. So it is important because election fraud happens when people tamper with numbers. And I've told you before that you go and check Uganda's election data. Why is it that? Or is the first candidate is between 68, that's the highest they have ever gone, 57, and then the second one is 27, 37. Now let me go and check. There's a number which is consistent. The voter turnout is always consistent. So so to me, I'm not a mathematician, but the little mathematics I know that when you're dealing with spreadsheets, you just have to touch one area. If I am able to change and actually go and analyze the voter turnout, it's almost been the same. Is that true? So I just have to deal with the voter turnout and then the other percentages will play themselves. Why is it that our election results are between 57, 68 is the highest, and the second runner-up, they have never gone beyond 30 something. It's always there. Why? Are you saying that for the last, I don't know how many elections we've had, that that's how Ugandans behave and vote? So everything is about numbers. Thank you, Felix.
Thank you so much. Let's take a 60-second break. And when we come back, we want to look at the fate of these constituencies that when you subject the interpretation of the 63 Article 63, Clause 3, Clause 5, and Clause 6, whether they still stand and can be deemed to be legitimate. 60-second break, and then we come back. Welcome back from the break. Like I said, we are still discussing the implication of the National Census on elections that are forthcoming. Just 18 months away, we'll be heading to the polls. But we had a very important exercise where we had our National Census conducted, ended on 25th of May, and we're trying to make sense what that exercise means to the forthcoming elections, and especially when you talk about demarcation of new constituencies. What is the implication? How does that speak to either some constituencies being either overrepresented or underrepresented? And what is the fate of some of those that seem to be, when you subject the interpretation of Article 63, when you subject the interpretation of Article 63, especially in regard to when the constitutions were created, whether they still stand the test, the litmus test of credibility. And now let me come to Henry. Henry, I think there are either 16. I think there are about 16 of those constituencies that are contested. Oh, not necessarily contested, but okay, when you subject them to this clause, depending on how you interpret it, you can say they can be contested legally. I'm not a lawyer, but I want your take. What does this mean when you look at these constituencies and you subject them to this clause? Do we have a case? Are they legal?
Thank you. The bit of it is you're not asking a lawyer. So me, I will speak as a political scientist and a citizen. So if you look at the constituencies that are touched, concerned, I think the total number, it could come to around 43 or 44, or thereabout. Because you are looking at the, what is it called, the city woman MP. City woman MP, there are 10 cities, so that's 10. And then you have constituencies again that were created every time they split the cities. Michael just informed you about Nakawa East and Nakawa West. What criteria do they follow? So you have cities such as Soroti, which has Soroti East, Soroti West. So that division, Masaka Mukungwe, Nyedo Mukungwe, for us who come from Masaka, Nyedo Mukungwe, and then you have Kimanya Kabonera. Those ones, what law gave them force? And then, of course, we're looking at municipalities. Michael articulated it very well. You see, municipalities are created under the Local Government Act. And you see, the Local Government Act does not take anybody to Parliament. The act that takes people to Parliament is the Parliamentary Elections Act. So anybody created, any position constituency created under the Local Government Act should be able to take people to the district council or sub-county council. So if you aggregate those representatives of municipalities that are there illegally, then the district woman, city woman MP, and then those MPs from cities that were created under the local government, again, those cities again were not created under the Parliamentary Elections Act. They were created under the Local Government Act. The Act of Local Government required another act to qualify them to become parliamentary constituencies. That did not happen. So you are looking at an aggregate of about 40, close to 44. Now, that means a lot. Those 44 men and women who are in Parliament, and we want to think legally, because we are not sure that the due process of the law was followed. Now, if you look at me, the taxpayer, who is contributing to their emoluments, I pay the taxes, they get the emoluments, including getting out of the emoluments and use their positions to extort money, because now we have just seen 3 of them are incarcerated in Luzira as we speak. The reason is that in addition to what we pay them as taxpayers, they go ahead and use their positions to commoditize the legislature, and then they're seeking to collect rent on the the budget process and other bills they get to discuss. I know that many of them have been chewing money on the sugar bill. They got bribed on the collected money from the the legislation around the importation of cars. I know that we have had when people have confessed those who took sacks there in the office of the committee that were working on that. Then they were on lotteries and gaming. They've been collecting. They had used this. So if you quantify the amount of money we are spending and losing out of those 44 something, I think we would significantly waive the burden that sits on the shoulders of the poor and subaltern voters that have had enough. So this is what we're talking about. So, but the bigger question is, what is there in the political implication, and is there political will on the side of the party in power to do this or go down this path? That remains to be seen, which is why now it takes us back to what Michael just alluded to as the power belonging to people who shall determine how they shall be governed. And I think those who have the power to determine how they shall be governed, until they come to get pressure to bear on the men and women they have delegated public office to exercise it in the interests, the best interests of those that have delegated it to them, that wouldn't happen. So these are things we see going wrong. We speak about rule of law, but when you live in situations where the law, we behave sometimes because we are in power as if the law is upon our whims and caprices. Instead of following it, we use it to do what we want. This then becomes the problem. So I think this is an issue that every Ugandan should be concerned about. It is an issue that we should look into. I would be very surprised. I have read the Electoral Commission roadmap, strategic plan. They are already in the budget. They are already budgeting for more constituencies. Now we have learned that even if the results of the population census are warranting the creation of new constituencies, those cannot be actioned in 2024 because those would come after the dissolution of the parliament, and that would be after the election. But you see what will happen, and don't be surprised when the Electoral Commission swings into action on the basis of the results of the published National Census, and then they are creating new constituencies just as they have foreseen them in their strategic plan. So these are some of the deficiencies that we've come to live with, and we can only speak about them. Over to you, Felix.
Thank you, so Henry. Michael, what is the fate, if we are to go by the interpretation of Article 63, what is the fate of these 44 new constituencies that were created outside? That is one. But also two, how do we get out of this? What options do we have?
Thank you, Felix. I think for me, we've been taken for a ride for a long time, and I think that every day some of us sleepless hours, not because we are paid, but because we think we love our country and we hope our country loves us too. Is that we should not be joking about political participation. By the way, Article 38 of the Constitution says that it is a right for a citizen to participate in the affairs of their government. Clause B, either individually or in association with others. Now, MPs shouldn't think that the only way Ugandans can participate in the affairs of government is through them. Article 38 is clear. It's even a civic duty. I'm even here thinking, I'm like, maybe we need to sit as a country and agree that we don't need MPs. We have Article 38. It's high time we sit and say, do we need all this? Because I can assure you we're going to have 600 members of parliament in 2026. That's why they're building a big chamber. That chamber was originally designed for 80 MPs. Can we go back and ask how we want our country to be? We need to have a national consensus. The Right Honorable Mao, who is the Minister of Justice, while in DP, okay, maybe still in DP, used to say, guys, we need a national consensus. We need a national dialogue. I think for me, national dialogue is just a means. We need a national consensus on the Uganda we want. Do we need all the 600 MPs? Ask me a question as Mike Aboneka. How have I benefited from? By the way, I vote for a woman MP as Mike Aboneka. Did you know that?
Yes.
But I'm not a woman. I vote for LC5. I vote for LC3. I vote for LC1. I vote for the constituency MP. I vote for 6 leaders. Now, of those, the LC5 chairperson of Kayunga district is the most important for me. Tell me how the woman MP, who is Ida Nantaba, that I voted for in Kayunga, how does she benefit me? But I stood in the line to vote for her. And I spent money on a ballot paper for me, a man, to vote for her. How many women MPs, women as campaign managers? How many? What was the purpose of Article 32 and the affirmative action? Article 38 is clear that Parliament shall review the affirmative action every 10 years so that we are sure whether we need them or not. I've written to the Parliament, I've written to the Minister of Justice asking evidence of when Parliament did that. Do you know how they review? It is a discussion in Parliament, and they say, item review of Article 78. Let's maintain, the ayes have it. That's not review. This is something I think all Ugandans need to get interested in. But what does the review mean of special interest group representation? The workers' MPs, what do they do in Parliament? Because the actual MPs say we are also workers. So are these guys also representing the MPs who are already represented? And for you to limit...
Are you saying we have redundant MPs?
We have a lot of redundancy in that house. What the workers' MP do? Okay, I am a youth. How has the youth MP helped me as Mike Aboneka, me? What do they do? What we need are youth policies, mainstreaming. We need a parliament of 80 people who actually apply. Their job is there. They are legal experts. They are people like you. They are researchers, like my friend Johnson, and all these others. And as citizens, we can participate directly in the affairs of government. I, Mike Aboneka, have gone to the Committee of National Guidance to guide them on why they should not pass the Computer Misuse Amendment Act. Myself, because I'm interested in digital rights. When Parliament passed it, I went to court. We have a petition there. I'm participating directly. None of my MPs. We send them texts, please debate on this issue. They're in Arusha playing football. Because we need to sit down and have a national consensus on the Uganda we want. The right to political participation is not only left to politicians, like Charles Digwa says. I'm speaking as if with a lot of anger, but you see, for me, I am tired of pretending as a citizen because we spend so much money. How much money goes to Parliament? We are paying them cars. I'm still crying up to now. I am advocating for magistrates to get cars. They are serving people. You find a magistrate is in charge of Kamwenge. They have to go to somewhere in Fort Portal in Mugusu. But he has no car. And then you expect him to be corrupt-free. But an MP there, who is not always coming to the constituency. I've never seen my MP. The last time I saw my MP, they were in my father's house. Either to cajole him for me not to stand, or wanting to find out whether I want to stand. All of them, they have come to my father's house. That's the last time I saw them. Or my father's church to pledge cement, which they never brought. So I think that we need to be serious as a country. We need to be serious as a country, and as Ugandans have a national consensus, which way do we want? All those MPs, and I'm glad that ACFIM and Walezi Wakatiba and Peter Magela have petitioned court over this issue. And I'm hoping that we can have this matter resolved before the elections, even if it's after. But we need to start challenging these issues and have a national consensus of what kind of dispensation we want. Felix, as I conclude, I've also challenged courts. I've filed a petition on challenging MPs doubling as ministers. Because then, at what point does the minister represent the people? Is bound by collective responsibility in the cabinet on Monday. If government decides to say we are taking this land over to construct this, but you're supposed to represent those people. So you come back to the house and lay the government position. So at what point do you say, right now, I've stopped speaking as a minister, and I'm now speaking as an MP. This is what my people are saying. The only time they speak as MPs is when there is now Toji Kwata call, let's debate on removal term limits. When was the last time you saw a minister of health sitting on a committee of parliament? Because she's supposed to represent the people of leader on committees of parliament as an MP. When have you ever seen a minister sit on a committee of parliament? We are being taken for a ride as Ugandans. We need to sort these issues of the Uganda we want, which type of governance system we need to have, because we are empowered under Article 3 that we need to determine the Uganda we want. But I want to thank ACFIM and Walezi Wakatiba for taking this up, and we hope that courts can listen. And you see, one of the things we're asking for is that the Constitution under Article 78, there shall be one district woman representative. And by the way, we are still asking for the interpretation of that. They don't say woman MP. They say one woman representative. Now, if a man can vote for a woman representative, can also a man represent a woman in the parliament? Can we see more women going for the mainstream politics, like Honorable, the one of Mukono Municipality and Amboze has done? She has stood over men for a period of time and beaten them. That's when we shall see the fruits of empowerment. There are MPs who have been on the card for woman MP for long, for forever. They don't want to leave. And they even said that God put them there, they can't leave. But we can also ask the same God to remove them. So what I'm saying is that people should not take representation of people as a career, as a job. It's a service. It's a conviction to serve the people. Now, the moment you see it as career and making money and all these things, then we lose it. So I want to thank everyone who is doing their great job. I'll continue to do my job. ACFIM is doing their job, and also Ugandans, because we have a right to participate in affairs of our government through litigation, through discussions like this. When there's always a matter on voting, how many Ugandans know how many bills the parliament has passed? And how many Ugandans know whether their MP was in parliament that day or not? I text mine. I call him. I'm like, Sevo Oliwa, there's an issue here. And I also want to thank the MPs. They could be watching this or watch it later. There are those who reach out to me in the inbox on this matter. How should I debate? And then we prepare notes and we give them to the parliament. That is what is supposed to happen. So I want to say that it is high time Ugandans, we determine the Uganda we want and what kind of political participation and governance system we want. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Henry, your parting shots on that one?
Yeah, of course, on those parting shots, when Michael was asking what those men and women are doing in parliament that he mentioned, my thought ran quickly to the UPDF representatives. Because you know, the UPDF that is morphed out of NRA, one of the reasons they fought was to fight corruption. And what were they? Where were they when the so-called service awards were going on? And they sit in parliament. Isn't that proof enough that these are just there as listening posts and that you don't need listening posts? to spend our monies on such people. So I think we need to rethink on how we have to be governed as a country. It's also important that as many the young people who now constitute the majority of the population, and as we are going to be reaffirmed by the results of the census, should understand that you don't become a citizen and occupy a citizen a country for occupying its sake. There are critical duties and civic roles that you must perform. One of them is to pick interest and engage in political affairs and participate in the national discourse and determining the direction your country is taking. And therefore, just a clarion call to the young people, wherever they are, that it's important that they get interested, regardless of your gender, participate in affairs of your country, enjoy and exercise your civil and political rights. I'll stop there, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. That was Henry Muguzi, who is the Executive Director of Alliance for Finance Monitoring, a political finance think tank. And with me also I had Mike Aboneka, who is an advocate for Thomas and Michael advocates. So it was nice. We were discussing the implication of the National Census on the elections of 2026. Please take interest in the affairs of the country, take interest in every process that leads up to 2026, especially if you are a responsible citizen. Allow me to leave it at this. My name is Felix Kafuma. Until next time, have a great time. Be blessed.